Please join me in welcoming Dr. Anderson.
Thanks, Jay. Thank you. Awesome. So I only have a couple minutes. I'm going to go quick, but it's really been interesting to me how similar a lot of we've independently come to this, but a lot of us have done essentially the same things. So I might bore you, so these are my takeaways if you fall asleep during my talk. I strongly encourage you, if you guys are starting something, apologize. If you go out and start to talk to the risk managers, the FAA, everything is the first step, you'll be burdened by so much concern and you'll never get going. So I really don't want to do anything illegal, but you need to activate yourself. You need to start down the road first and then work with all these various folks. Obviously the biggest threats, FAA and risk management to a quick launching of your program. But it's really important that you define the rules. And what we found, so we've been doing this for about 8-9 years now, and the FAA has changed so many times over that period that we've had to completely overhaul our program in many different ways in terms of the legal and insurance world and all that kind of stuff. But we found that if you guys define what you're doing, your safety, how you're going to maintain your standards, that goes a tremendous amount of the way to satisfy those various folks that have real concerns. We created our first unmanned systems board, which is essentially like a human subjects board. So a long time ago, and now, unfortunately, that's now the rule for all the other CSUs. And we have made bureaucracy for people, which is sorry about that. But it's essentially like a human subjects board for doing biomedical or psychological experiments. So any classroom use, any research use, our operations run through this board, which is made up of professors, administrators, and members from the wider community to just make sure we're doing things safely and appropriately. In general, as probably most of us here that are educators, we really do have a student-centered approach to this. It's really interdisciplinary, and I can't emphasize how that tends to be different from some of our research university colleagues. They approach these things quite differently, in my experience. We also use a lot of applied projects in our program, so that, as we heard from our previous speakers, that really helps mainline the students really quickly into doing stuff as opposed to a theoretical discussion. And then we have a lot of diverse partnerships and collaborations which help in a variety of ways. So some aspects of our program are maybe a little bit unique to us, but virtually everything I think you guys could probably replicate in whole or in part in your program. So the first is, so we're at this brand new campus. We only started about 14 years ago, so we're young. And we're a former state mental hospital. Some people say we still are a mental hospital. But one of the benefits, we had all this interesting infrastructure. So for example, years ago, when the FAA wasn't allowing us to use students with this thing called Part 333, which you don't need to care about anymore, we weren't allowed for a while to fly outside. So this is an old hay barn that is missing the walls. So the wind would blow, the sun would get in their eyes, mosquitoes would get on them just like they were outside, but technically it was an indoor space. So we had a lot of unique things that allowed us to engage and do training even when we had constraints. So that includes policies, facilities, these partnerships we talked about. We were the first one to sign an MOU with NOAA. And so we're one of the places that NOAA brings its pilots to train on their UAS systems. Right. And there's this huge interplay between equipment and philosophy. This is our newest building. This is an incredibly clean picture. It's normally full of robots and all kinds of weird stuff. Essentially a makerspace that we have in our lab. That's our makerspace. This is our makerspace for our local high school students that come and do classes on campus. And so I would say things that you guys can replicate are really this notion of new thinking and wholesale overhauls. Some of this stuff really does take different approaches, and starting from scratch can really be helpful as opposed to adding it on into a new program. We benefit from everything on our campus was brand new and needed to be built, so we could build stuff from the ground up. We didn't have constraints about there's a machine shop over here that you have to use. We just put the machine shop in our labs, so that was also very beneficial. We have a very diverse and very traditionally underrepresented student body, a lot of veterans, a lot of first-generation college goers. We're a Hispanic serving institution, and that's an incredible strength when it comes to this kind of stuff. Again, in some venues where I've spoken to people, they don't understand how that could possibly be a strength, but it absolutely is. And we can talk about that later if you want. And these things I mentioned before about interdisciplinary and applied focus, etc. We're also at the cusp of this new industrial revolution, as we just heard, with this funding and this training that's coming on. the fourth definition of the fourth industrial revolution is sort of evolving, but it includes things like robotics, autonomy, 3D printing, virtual reality that we use to control a lot of our aircrafts, and distributed control systems. And so that stuff's embedded from day one of our program, and so those students come out with an appreciation and a facility with that stuff. This is how we started on this journey about 8 years or so ago. This was a decommissioned craft that was given to the university, and I said, great. We actually had two of them, this Delta Wing fixed wing aircraft. And our university president, who's a fantastic guy, said, no, we're not going to take it. And we said, what? And he said, so we tend to think of drones like this, right? Conservation stuff, drone racing, whatever. This is what many people, some of our administrators and risk management people tend to think there's some real reasons that these are valid concerns. And so again, that led us to spend about 1.5 years and create this unmanned systems board, which had to be vetted with the state of California and all these folks in between. And now this is a huge way forward for us. In addition, the last thing I'll say before I get off, because my time is almost up. The last thing I'll say is do not focus only on the technology. That will be a very short-term focus. We focus a lot on the technology, but that alone can't be it. So for example, we spend a lot of time talking about what the public's concerns are about this technology. And we do polling. We have a national drone survey we do every year and all these other ones. This particular one is a coastal California survey that we survey between 1,000 and 1,500 people, mostly in Los Angeles, Ventura, and Santa Barbara counties, but all the way down here to San Diego too, in the fall. And so, for example, this is just 1 year I grabbed. This is 2014, but it makes the point. So the question here is to the general public, what do you think about small unmanned aerial aircraft flying around in your neighborhood or your parks or whatever? 2 to 1, people have a negative view of that. They say that's bad. And that's usually how the debate seems to go with our administrators, the risk managers, et cetera. The reality is that's baloney, right? This is the real answer. The people that are neutral or the people that haven't made up their mind, that's about 2/3 of the population are there. So if you engage your community and talk about the potential value of this equipment and using it responsibly, that's where we can get a huge boost, and that's where we can secure the future and the use of this technology beyond just the first couple year or two, and really take us into some great places. So I'm out of time, but I'll just note we do a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring. We have a lot of varied partnerships. This is with our NOAA colleagues, and we do a lot of stuff to try to bring this to the public outside the classroom as well. So this will be our 3rd year of doing our drone data race, where everybody's invited to attend. You can win money, you can win prizes. Instead of just doing a drone speed race, you have to collect some data. The first one was about oil spills. You had an image of fake oil spill. The second one is you had to image a fake fire. And those have been really, really helpful in building partnerships and getting the word out to the local community, especially a lot of our public agencies. And I'll just end by saying that I'll end on this guy. It was really cool. That was a cool picture of Warren. So one of my students, Paul Spar, now works for Pix4D. And so a lot of my students now are being hired in industry, and our student success is really our metric of how we're doing. So Silicon Valley has now become, even though we're in Ventura County, Southern California, they're one of the main places that hire our students, in addition to San Diego here, which most of our underwater vehicles, students go down here to work on those. So with that, I'll answer any questions, but thanks a lot, and I think I'm out of time. So thanks, you guys.